This video was brought to you by the lovely members of my Patreon. It was interesting to me. It was very, very interesting to me because these are things he said he never wanted. A white woman in marriage. These are things he said he never wanted. Hey guys, it's Kat and it's time for another episode of True Tea. I want to thank you guys so much for coming back and joining me for another brew of True Tea on this channel. If you guys like these videos and you're not subscribed, which apparently like 50% of you guys aren't, please do. We're getting closer and closer every single day to 200,000 subscribers. That is a goal of mine. It's been a goal of mine for a really long time. I've been on here for a while and I would love to hit that milestone. So if you like these videos, you keep coming back every week, you might as well subscribe. And when you do, make sure that you turn on your notifications. I'm discovering that only about 2% of you actually get notifications from my videos, which is kind of depressing. So if you are subscribed, check and make sure that you click on that little bell and make sure you're getting notified for all of my videos. I upload videos at least once a week. So if you want to, not miss out on them, that's how you do it. So yeah. Anyway, how are you guys doing? I personally I took my hair down today. Because we're in quarantine, guys. I have finally been trying to really wear my hair out for a while. I've been trying to work on my natural. And as I was taking down my hair, I did flat twists. And I gotta say, girl, my hair looks so cute. Sometimes when you do a twist out and it doesn't come out the way you want it to, and then you do one and it just comes out so good. Honestly, maybe some of y'all might think it doesn't look cute, but for me, it's cute. I had that impulse to get up and go out because I thought I looked so cute, but then I realized, oh, we're quarantining and there's nowhere to go. So I figured that I would, kind of drink some wine and have a conversation with you guys about something that I've been thinking about while in quarantine. And I'll be honest with you guys, this is probably gonna be a little bit of an emotional video. I don't know exactly where my emotions are gonna go, but I have some thoughts, I have some things I wanna share. And you guys know that True Tea is just all about me being honest. I'm not always right about shit. I don't always know what I'm talking about, but it's just about me being real in that moment. That's what this is. So yeah, if you would like to join me, run to your kitchen, grab yourself some wine or tea or whatever you prefer, and let's have this conversation together. Let's take a sip to start it off. So I don't know where my emotions are gonna go in this video. These are some things that I've talked a bit about with my Patreon members, but I haven't shared with you guys. And because I'm learning so much about myself in this solitude, I figured that I would come and share it publicly because I've had a lot of deep thoughts in quarantine. And I don't really know how to quite say this without potentially sounding offensive, but in all honesty, I've been flourishing in this quarantine. I've been tapping into parts of myself that I thought didn't exist anymore. All those things that I said I didn't have time to do, that I couldn't do because I just didn't have the energy to do it. I suddenly now have the energy and time to do it because all we can do really is sit inside our houses and, sort of think and create. And I feel so much better, honestly, because I've been spending more time with myself. And I've been unpacking that and having a lot of conversations. And the universe is really funny. The universe she is just so hilarious, because there are so many things that happen very synchronously, that's not a word. There are things that happen almost as, an act of synchronicity. We really try to make that work. That just make me think, you get the same message over and over and over and over and over again. And oftentimes when I get that from the universe, I feel like sharing it with you guys. So that's what we're gonna do in this video. So, I feel like I say this in every video, but I always assume that some of the people who are clicking on to my videos have not always been following my content, so they don't always know who I am. So I feel like I gotta reintroduce myself for those of you guys who are brand new, because it's gonna be relevant to this particular conversation. I'm Kathryn, I'm 29 years old, I am transgender, I am polyamorous, I'm involved in several alternative communities, even if you can't tell from my makeup, which somehow is registering as very normie looking on camera, but and that's been something that's really important. All those things I just mentioned have been pretty important to how I engage with, different groups when I moved to Los Angeles. I moved to LA like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I don't know how to count. And it's definitely been a lot of growing pains. I've learned a lot about myself. And it was a completely new experience for me because, you know, I hadn't really been on my own, you know. I was in a relationship for 5 years. It was a very monogamous relationship where I was very, very isolated, living in Orange County with my partner. And coming out here, by the time I moved out here, my family had already moved out of state. I had no one. So it was really important for me to find community. And as I mentioned, I'm part of the BDSM community. And one of the first things I started doing when I came to LA was going to these things that we like to call in the community munches. And munches are basically, you know, you go to a bar or a restaurant and you just sit and have conversations with other people who are involved in kink, right? And one of the things that I've always noticed about most of these communities, I live in Los Angeles, is that they're very, very, very white. They're very, very white. And I mean, that's true for almost every social circle, but they're very, very, very white. So before this all happened, before the world ended up, you know, collapsing, I went to this munch, right? And I met this guy. He was very tall. I'm 5'10" if you can't tell. So I always notice when men are taller than me. And my go-to like flirty line to say whenever I meet a guy who's taller than me is to, you know, just walk up and ask like, how tall are you? You know, oh my gosh, like men, you know, what I just said. I mean, usually I notice when men are taller than me because I'm so tall. I mean, I know 5'10" isn't the tallest, but it's pretty tall compared to a lot of other women. So I notice it and it's like my flirty pickup line thing, right? So I meet this guy and he's really, really sweet. And we're having a conversation and it seemed to go really, really well. But the conversation definitely started to wane. And I'd always sort of assumed that I had kind of crossed a line. So I kind of figured I flubbed it. You know, I messed up my chances and it kind of, you know, was what it was. Him and I did connect on a fetish website later and we did keep in contact, but there was not this sort of thing I was picking up we would do where we would, you know, keep in contact and go out and things like that in the beginning of our conversation. So of course the world decides that it wants to have a pandemic, right? And I get an email from him. And he is, you know, basically saying hi and, you know, apologizing for losing contact. You know, and he says like something along the lines of, you know, I've been unpacking a lot of things and, you know, if you would like for me to go into it, I can, but either way, I'm doing well. He explained two things to me, right? One of the things he said was that he assumed that I was a cis woman, and because of me not being a cis woman, he was a little iffy about how to proceed, right? And I'm used to that. That's not the big deal. That's not the thing that really this video is about, even though that's kind of part of it. We'll get into that later. Then he told me that one of the big reasons for him backing away in that conversation that we were having was that he had never really found himself attracted to a Black woman and that he was still unpacking a lot of those thoughts because he was raised apparently in Northern California in a very racist area. His parents were very against him dating women of color. And you know, right around the time where, you know, we started talking, our conversation ended rather, there was this sort of group of white women, some of my friends actually, who came in and he kind of like started to, you know, put the energy towards having conversations with them, right? Which, no big deal. It's a munch. I'm a very social person. I jump from place to place to place to place. But I recognize that he was kind of wanting to divert his attention in that direction, which is, there's no problem with that, right? I had a lot of thoughts when he told me that because, you know, one of the things that I experience so much in life is men being attracted to me, but not really knowing what to do with that. I mean, that's just the truth for me as a trans person, and it's been the truth for me as a Black woman. In so many ways, I would say that it's more true for me as a Black woman than it is for me as a trans woman. I'm very used to being men's first everything. First Black woman, first trans woman, you know, and I don't really like that. I don't really like that. That's not really my thing. You know, I think maybe there was a time in my life where I didn't like myself as much as I do now, where I would have enjoyed being the first. But to be honest with you, I don't really like having partners who need to focus on my race or my transness. That's not really what I like to do. I don't want men to date me because I'm Black. I don't want men to want to date me because I'm trans. I want them to want to date me because of me, you know, and both of those things inform who I am as a person, but they are not the beginning and ending of those things. And of course, when you're dealing with somebody who's new or inexperienced or hasn't done anything before, all they're gonna do in both, you know, situations is project their assumptions about who you are. You know, so a lot of the times, you know, that I would interact with white men, right, who were approaching me as a Black woman, I would hear all the time, well, you don't sound like your typical Black girl. You know, da-da-da-da, I'm not usually attracted to Black girls. I don't da-da-da-da-da-da-da. All this sort of stuff that, again, maybe when I was younger, I would have heard and, you know, maybe not had an issue with it. But today, I don't really want to teach you about how there's a diversity of, you know, people who are Black and how they present themselves and things like that. So it's interesting because in quarantine, this is the thing that started to get me to think about this. I think in the past, you know, when a man tells me that he's inexperienced and he has to work through his feelings about my race or my gender, I think I had a lot of patience for that. You know, I think I had a lot of like, all right, well, he's new, so I'm gonna, you know, maybe give him time to sort of fully think this through. And one of the things I recognize is that when I would go out all the time, I would spend so much time entering into spaces where I knew sort of discomforts around my race and gender were going to be, right? I would go to certain events where I knew I was gonna be one of the only Black women, and I wasn't going there because of that. I wasn't doing it because I want to be one of the only Black girls. You know, there's this event that's open to everybody, and most of the people who go are white, you know? That's just the sort of thing. And in LA, there's like a handful of spaces, and most of them are very, very white. So it just kind of ends up being that way. And there was like this one party that I would go to all the time, and I think I've vaguely discussed it on True Tea. A lot of times when I talk about making my themed outfits, it's for this particular party. And it's so weird because I feel like I'm an attractive person. You know, I think I'm cute, you know, I've got like a cute face and a cute body and things like that. I think I'm attractive, right? But when I go to that particular party, I feel ugly, you know, I feel ugly. And I feel ugly because I notice how much men don't quite prefer me, right? I am always in this space, the exotic, interesting, weird thing, not even because I'm trans. Half the time, these men don't even know that I'm trans. It's usually because I'm Black. Usually that is the most immediate thing. I become this exotic thing that men are attracted to, but are too reserved to actually pursue, right? And so what ends up happening in this particular space, in that particular party, is I have this long list of men who I know are attracted to me, who I know are interested in me, who I know want to do things with me, but they do this thing where they'll lean over into their interest in me, but will ultimately end up coupling with a white woman that night. And it just kind of becomes this thing where the preferences of most men become very obvious. Very, 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 very obvious. And one of the things I recognize is that when I would go to spaces like that a lot, you know, it would make me sort of look at myself in a different way. You know, when I'm sitting alone in my house, looking in my mirror, looking in my viewfinder, I think I'm the hottest thing in the world. I think that I am so fucking pretty. And that just sort of is what it is. I feel so much pride in my hair texture, my body, my skin color, my gender, all of these things. I look at and I say, you're beautiful, not even thinking about it, right? But I go to these sort of spaces and suddenly I have this weird, people are expressing interest in me, but they're afraid of how to pursue it. They're afraid of how to go about it. They don't want to offend me. That's the most annoying thing is there's so many people who, because I'm Black and it's so new to them, they're just obsessively worried about offending me, which usually means they're going to, you know, they're usually going to say something ignorant that is offensive, right? Instead of just interacting with me like a normal person would. They treat me with kid gloves, and I always feel like that is so condescending, right? And that actually feeds into another sort of thing that is very frustrating to me. You know, listen, like I said, I think I'm cute, but I don't really expect for other people to think that I'm cute, especially because as much as I don't like to sort of say this out loud, I'm very aware of the fact that to a lot of people, Black women of all women are the least attractive women. And you make that woman trans, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. So while I have a lot of pride in myself, I'm also very realistic about who, you know, by, you know, my degree in which I'm going to be able to be attractive universally. I'm not. I'm going to be a bit more of an acquired taste, which makes me feel really shitty, you know? And one of the things I recognize, both being Black and trans, is that there are a lot of people who, like, let's just be, we're being true, we're being honest, let's just say things. I'm trying to speak around these things, but let's just say things. We're gonna be saying a lot of things like this in this video, so I think some people are not gonna like it. Let me take a sip. A lot of white people and a lot of cis people, right, walk around with this awareness of the insecurity of Black women and trans women, and I'm both, right? They know that a lot of trans people are insecure. They know that a lot of Black people are insecure about their race and about their gender, like I said, and I'm both. And so what a lot of people will do is they will, you know, compliment you maybe more than they actually believe, because they're trying to, in so many ways, they're trying to reassure you. They're trying to sort of be nice, right? They're trying to be nice. But at least for me, that sort of you go girl, you know, sort of shit, which I never know are they pandering to me because I'm Black? Are they pandering to me because I'm trans? I don't really know. That sort of you go girl, da-da-da-da-da sort of thing, I can't help but read it as a false compliment. I can't help but read it as a false compliment. And that's one of the things that gets to me at these particular parties that I'm talking about is I walk around and everyone's like, ooh, damn, da 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 da. I get nothing but compliments, nothing but people saying that I'm so fucking pretty. I'm so beautiful. Oh, I'm so this, I'm so that, da 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 da. But then I have the reality of them saying this and then not pursuing me, right? So one of the things I've started to recognize with time, especially as I had that conversation with him, that guy I was talking about originally, is that some of these spaces are really fucking toxic for me. They're toxic for me only because they're making me walk out of those spaces with a shifted view of myself, right? When I'm getting ready for the party, I think I'm the hottest thing in the world. When I'm alone in my house with this dress that I made, which I made this dress, by the way. But when I'm alone in my house with the dress that I made, I think I'm the hottest shit in the world, you know? Then I go to this party and I'm being largely overlooked and being largely ignored, not just by white people, but by the few Black people that are there too. The few Black men that are there too, because the Black girls, we're always getting together and saying hi and hanging out and connecting. Like, we're always doing that, right? But, you know, we'll talk about that later. It shifts the way that I feel about myself, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't. And so when this guy came to me and was saying, you know, oh, you know, I'm attracted to you, but you know, I'm dealing with all this internal sort of racism that I've been raised with and things like that. I just started to think about how servicing that energy doesn't do anything for me. Not only does it not do anything for me, but when you really think about it, it's very demeaning. I don't want to have to sit with a white man and help him understand that I'm a woman worthy of common decency and respect. That I'm just like all the other girls, I'm just a different color. I don't want to fucking do that. It's a waste of my fucking time. You know? And one of the interesting things about being alone in all of this quarantine is that, you know, there's a part of me that is sad that I'm not nesting with someone. There's a part of me that is really sad that I don't have a nesting partner, that I'm not living with someone, that someone's not around, right? But that's like almost the irrational part of my brain that doesn't make any sense, because ultimately I know that I'm doing really well on my own. And objectively, I don't want to live with someone right now, you know? When I got out of my relationship, I was like, I lived with this guy for like 4 years, you know, in 3 different places. I want to live on my own. I don't want to have roommates. I don't want to have a partner live with me. So I know that, but there's part of me that's like, well, why don't I have a nesting partner? Well, why don't I have a nesting partner, right? And so I've had a lot of these sort of passing thoughts about having a nesting partner. And of course, when I think about having a nesting partner, I've only ever had one. So I think about my ex, who fits into this conversation very, very well. I had to get another glass of wine because I am a little nervous about my emotions in this particular part of the video. So I'm gonna take another sip and let's talk about this. So I found out that my ex just recently got engaged. And my ex and I, we were together for 5 years, and I really, really loved him. He was a really, really important person to me. And we broke up because, well, for a lot of reasons, but we ultimately broke up because I recognized that I was polyamorous, and I recognized that I needed certain things that he wasn't comfortable or interested in giving me. And I needed to be true to myself. I wasn't happy. I wanted to live in LA. He hated LA. I didn't really know where our relationship was going. And one of the things that I guess kind of hurt hearing about his engagement was that he would always say that he didn't really believe in marriage. And so to find out that he got married or is trying to get married after he broke up with me, it was kind of a bit of a hard pill to swallow, especially because I know he was dating this person for a much, much, much shorter period of time than he was dating me. I mean, I was with him for 5 years and we didn't get there. So that was depressing. And I think what made it even more depressing was that he was getting engaged to a white woman. Now, let's just start with saying this. I hope the white women who hear this don't get offended by these things I'm saying. I mean, actually, I don't really care, but I don't have anything against white women at all. But my ex used to always say that he did. My ex would spend so much time talking shit about white women. And this never flattered me. This never made me feel good about myself, you know? But the way that he would talk about white women was like, he just found them to be the most repulsive people in the entire world. He would never be caught dead with a white woman kind of thing. And so to find out that he's engaged to one, after being with me for 5 years and telling me that he didn't believe in marriage, that hurt for like a millisecond. Because I put a lot into our relationship. And I think often as a woman, you think that if you put a lot of, you know, of your emotional energy into something, you're gonna get something back, but you know, that's not always how that ends up working. You can't just invest in a man and then expect that he's gonna wanna change, really. I mean, it's not an unreasonable assumption, but unlikely for a lot of men. So to go over really quickly the course of our relationship, when we first met, we were both very deeply, 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 deeply insecure. I was 21 years old. I had been abused and misused by men. When I met him, I had moved back in with my parents. I just graduated college. I didn't want to, I had sort of fully embraced the idea that no man would ever want to be with me, you know? And I always kind of had lived in this weird way where I understand that there are men who are attracted to me, but you know, historically, even if this hasn't been true for a very, very long time, historically, men have been ashamed to be with me, right? Men have been ashamed to date me, to announce to other people that they're dating me. So when I met him, I was going out, I had just turned 21. I was a little 21-year-old dating these much older men. And I very much sort of had the mentality of get them before they get me. You take me out for drinks. I'm this entitled person who just sort of feels like I deserve the world because I'm a woman. And that's how I'm just having a good time. I'm just enjoying life on these men's dimes because they're not giving me anything else, right? And so, but I met him and I fell in love with him, you know? He was willing to do things that a lot of men I hadn't dated, you know, were willing to do. I mean, I met his parents really early on. I met his friends really early on. And he was really aggressive about pursuing a relationship with me. And it felt really nice after years and years and years of not being treated well by men. So that I say all that to say that the bar was on the floor. The bar was on the floor. When I really look at where we were in the beginning of our relationship, and I'm honest, we were both two insecure people who wanted desperately to be in a relationship. Right? When I think back to how much he would talk shit about white women, you know, because he would always, I mean, he would do it so often. It was so weird. It was such a weird thing that I never asked for. And I've never really liked when men put other women down so that I can feel better, right? But again, I did have some insecurities early on. I remember I would have these like cry fits, you know, over certain, like I would, there were so many scenarios where I was like, oh, he's cheating on me. Cause I was at home, you know, I didn't work outside of the home. He'd be out for really late cause he worked in the restaurant industry. You know, my mind would just make up all these stories. And this was also during a time where I was very, very, very estrogenized. I was doing injectable hormones. And so there were a lot of just sort of emotional imbalances there. But yeah, I would really think that he was doing something wrong and he was doing this, he was doing that. And so I would have all these like insecurities. He would have like these female friends that he would hang out with. And I would always sort of be like, well, are you know, involved or are you doing anything with her? It was just real insecure shit that I wouldn't even start doing now. And usually these women were white women. And he would always tell me that, no, why would I do anything with those women? I'm not even attracted to white women, you know? So again, to summarize the course of our relationship, the first couple of years, we were fairly equal. There were times where he took care of me. There were times where I took care of him, right? For the most part, at the beginning of our relationship, he took care of me because he was making the most money and he had a family that was willing to help him. I did not. My parents have not financially supported me ever since I came out to them as transgender. So our situations were very different, right? But what ended up happening is my YouTube channel started taking off. So then I started traveling and my world became bigger and bigger and bigger. At first, I only had this like really, really small space and that's who I was, you know, hanging out with, mostly just my boyfriend. And then I started traveling the world and now I'm meeting all these people and I'm making new friends, things that I wasn't able to do before I started doing that. And so I started becoming more confident. I started genuinely liking myself more, not just pretending that I liked myself, right? And then I started to think about what I actually liked and what I actually wanted out of a relationship. And in so many ways, I realized fairly early on that it wasn't what he was giving me, but I loved him. I loved him so much. But what ended up happening towards the end of our relationship is as I became more successful, he became less and less and less driven to pursue his own stuff. You know, when I would ask him why he went to work every day, he would say he was going to work to provide for me, which was always really bizarre because that's not ever a thing I asked of him. I mean, we weren't married, we didn't have kids. It was a weird thing, you know? I was pursuing these things I was passionate about, and he was working the same shitty job that he's been working since high school. And he always had these aspirations of like wanting to do more. I mean, specifically, he was working as a driving instructor, and he wanted to work in the culinary field. And when things started becoming better for me, I actually said to him, because I loved him, I was like, here's the thing. I can start paying all of the rent because, you know, I can afford to do that now. And if you want to quit your job that you hate and start pursuing, you know, culinary, you want to go back to school, this and this and that, You can. And I've got rent, right? I think that was the last like 3 years of our relationship. That's how it went. Yeah, last 3 years. Shit, that was 3 years I did that. Yeah. I mean, it started out with, you know, I ended up paying some of it, and then he ended up paying, it was every so often he would give me his half. Then eventually he stopped giving me his half. And I was paying for absolutely everything. And while I was doing this, he was buying video games, vinyl, you know, I mean, I don't know if you guys can see it can you see it in this shot? But there's a couple of Storm things over here. Oh yeah, you can see them right here. These are all things that my ex bought for me. I think all of these things together probably cost $700, probably all together, maybe more. I'm probably not doing this correctly, but he would come with stuff like this. And I love these things, obviously, since I still have them. And he would present them to me after buying all this stuff for him, all while not paying rent, right? It was like he would buy these particular things and then be like, oh, but look what I got you. And I'm paying all the rent, right? And I'm kind of like, after a while, I start to feel like I was being taken advantage of. I start to feel like he was taking advantage of me, you know? And meanwhile, I started recognizing how unhappy I was in the relationship. I started recognizing how I wasn't getting what I wanted. And the straw that really broke the camel's back for me was I saw him on Twitter talking to a tattoo artist about getting a tattoo. Now, he had never said anything to me about this tattoo. He hadn't mentioned it. He hadn't talked about it, but he gets good tattoos. He gets really, really good tattoos, right? And I knew it was going to be an expensive fucking tattoo. And so when he was planning to get a tattoo and hadn't talked to me about it and hadn't been paying rent for a really, really long time, I just realized that he didn't give a fuck about me. He liked me being there. He liked me supporting him. I'm sure he loved me to some degree, and I'm sure he was attracted to me. But this was definitely a relationship where he was relying on me. And when we broke up, it definitely kind of became a thing where, oh, now where is he gonna go? Because I had money to move to LA. He didn't, you know? And I know that a lot of those tears towards the end of our relationship were probably, yes, because of all the bullshit that went on between us, which I won't get into. There was a lot. But I know that a lot of that was that he was now going to be in a position where he had to move back in with his parents. Now, of course, as a Black woman and as a trans woman, I have a lot of fear about people that I'm expressing and giving my sexual energy to not truly being attractive to me. I mean, as a trans woman, you hear the narrative all the time that men are only with you because you're convenient, because you're trying harder, because you're willing to put out more. And you know, in so many ways, I don't know how to say this correctly, but I'm just gonna say it. There are a lot of trans women and there are a lot of Black women who we deal with all of these feelings of rejection that we do put in a bit more. We do put in a little bit more. Like I said earlier in this video, a lot of white people, a lot of cis people are very aware of our insecurities. They're very, very aware of our insecurities, right? So they know that they can do very, very little and will do a lot. They know that they can come forward with the bare minimum and we'll just be thankful for it. And, you know, I've been watching a lot of Paris Milan videos. Love her channel. And she talks a lot about how a lot of Black women will get with men and then take care of them. You know, we'll be paying for all of this and paying for all of that. And listening to her over the past couple of days, you know, I've been really realizing how much I fell into that. I was taking care of this man. I was taking care of this man who maybe at one point was in love with me, was attracted to me, did care about me, you know, but had at a certain point stopped And I just became the sort of person who was willing to pay the rent and willing to keep him afloat. And when you really look at that, and you guys already know or should know by now that I'm a very forgiving person. I'm a very forgiving person. I'm positive that if I went down the long list of all the different things, you guys would see clearer and clearer and call it out sooner than I would that he was using me. But after years of reflecting on it, because it's been a while since it's been like 4 years since I broke up with him. It's clearer to me that he was using me. He was using me, and that fucking hurts. That really, really fucking hurts. But, it fucking sucks. And what I kind of recognized was that, his whole white women are disgusting thing. I mean, look, some men say shit like that, how to say this? I'm trying not to be offensive or to sound really wild when I say this, but like I said, one of my fears is feeling like a man is only using me for convenience, right? But here's the truth. A lot of men use black women and trans women for convenience because they know that they can say certain things, the bare minimum. They're treated so poorly that they can say the bare minimum, and will bend over backwards, literally and figuratively, What I recognized with time was when he would sit around and talk about white women. Oh, white women are this and white women are that, da-da-da-da-da, right? And he would say things like, oh, I just get along with trans women better. The truth was that he was very used to white women and cis women rejecting him. He was very, very used to, very, very accustomed to white women and cis women rejecting him. Right? And so he could sit around and have all of these sort of shitty things to say about them because they were rejecting him. But in truth, that's who he wanted. That's who he preferred. When he met this woman and was in a relationship with her for a really short period of time, which I know happens, but after years of telling me white women are disgusting, he would never ever want to be with one, isn't even attracted to one. The thought of him repulses him. Get married. He's engaged now. And again, I'm not upset or bitter or jealous, but I'm happy. I don't want him. I'm happy that he found somebody, right? But for me, what I'm left with is just the recognition of what all that was. It was all bullshit. It was all bullshit said to me because he knew that when he met me, was insecure, because he was too. And when I really look at this again, when I really, really examine this closely, we started having problems the moment that I started genuinely liking myself. When I started genuinely enjoying who I was. I talked about this before in my weight loss video, but he was a chef, he would cook food for me, things like that. There are times where I would try to go on like a keto diet or even a vegan diet, and he would deliberately sabotage the food that he was making for me. He was always coming home every single day and bringing me candy and sweet drinks and things like that. And then, taking it really personally when I didn't eat the things or drink the things, right? He wanted to keep me around and he wanted to keep me fat. Towards the end of our relationship, I started working out. I started making life changes. I started genuinely liking myself independent of how he felt about me. And that's when we started having issues. But when we had the best relationship early on, when I didn't like myself really. I might have said that I did, but I didn't really. That's when our relationship was the best. The moment my world became bigger, the moment I started to genuinely like myself, that is when we started having issues. That's when we started having problems. And when I think about it a lot, I think about how many sort of short-lived relationships I've been in like this, where I'm just sort of the thing that some of these men are spending time with, going through the motions with, but they don't truly prefer. I don't need to necessarily be preferred. I just don't want to be seen as a lesser option. you know? And I think one of the things that I sometimes struggle to digest is that I am that to a lot of men. You know, like as I'm sitting around in this quarantine being kind of sad that I'm alone and things like that, I'm not really sad. It's just one of those thoughts that I have in passing every once in a while. I think a lot about how I want a primary someday, but that's also conceptual. I just think I want a primary. I probably don't. Like I said, I'm thriving and flourishing in this quarantine. And I think that there's a reason for that. I think that there's a reason for that. And I also can't ignore that my life only became better after breaking up with him. I really do thrive on my own. I really do thrive in my solitude. I really, really do. You know, and so I think one of the things I'm doing again is re-examining the energy that I give to these things that make me feel like I'm not as great as I am. Why do I go to the parties that make me feel ugly? What's the point? What do I get out of that? How does it serve me? Why would I go on another date with a man who's already told me that he doesn't quite know if he's comfortable dating me because I'm Black? What do I get out of that? How does that serve me? I think when we had a lot of time before, I was willing to be patient. I was willing to be considerate. I was willing to sort of be, you know, the one who held a hand a bit. But listen, I've done that so many times in my life and it's never served me. It's never served me. I think one of the harsh realities that I'm coming to when it comes to sort of these interracial relationships is that it's not that, you know, white men can't date, you know, Black women and have like these good, you know, productive relationships. It's not impossible. It happens. I know several people, right? But the kind of guys who will stand around all day saying that they hate white women and love Black women, those are not men who are dating out of, you know, I've looked at all the options and I chose you, right? They're turning to me because they think I'm insecure and they can do things with me. They can get this. I mean, listen, I've had so many conversations where I reject somebody. I stand up for myself. I say no. And then suddenly my race becomes important. Suddenly they don't like that I'm trans. Suddenly I become an N-word or an F-word or a T-word, right? The moment that I say, oh no, I'm not actually interested in that. Can you please leave me alone? And that's one of the things that I've recognized. Men who have that particular approach, they despise when you have self-esteem. They despise when you actually like yourself. That is the worst thing to them. For you to actually like yourself and not be a self-loathing, sad little girl, oof, they can't handle it. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad that I've been having these self-reflections because I gain really nothing from going to these spaces that are occasionally racially antagonistic towards me. I don't gain anything from it. I do not. I don't. And it's not really worth my energy, you know? Again, when I sit inside alone in my room and look at myself, I know I'm a bad bitch, okay? I know that I'm a bad bitch. And that's true inside of my house and that's true outside of my house. So anyway, these are some things I wanted to share with you. Thoughts that I had, you know, for reasons we've already discussed on this channel. I mean, I'm not going to stop dating interracially. I mean, I have 5 partners. They're all non-Black. They're all white. So that's not happening. But the men that I'm partnered with are not men who have these weird issues with race, but they're not the average man. I mean, first of all, they're polyamorous. So they're not the average man. And I'm recognizing just how much energy I shouldn't give to men who aren't that evolved, which most men aren't. So it's sort of silly for me to assume that they will be. Anyway, on that note, I think I've said everything I want to say. If you guys watch this entire video, I would greatly appreciate it if you put this in the description box below, this emoji. This is what we do almost every single week. We like to, you know, emoji and, you know, talk and hang out in the comment section. So yeah, give me your true tea. I always love your brew. Thank you so much for coming here. Right now you're looking at 2 videos you can watch. If you'd like to continue to sip true tea right here on the channel, and in the bottom corner, there are several ways you can send me a tip, or you can send me your package if that's something that you're interested in doing. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.